The moment I saw Felicia rushing back to Port Charles, I knew something massive was about to drop, but I wasn't ready for that. I mean, we all knew the Cassius Phazon masquerading as Nathan West storyline was a ticking time bomb, but the way it just detonated, unbelievable. I am literally struggling to process the sheer intensity of what just happened between Carly and Cassius. It was a complete emotional overload. You spend weeks, months even, watching a storyline build up, waiting for the other shoe to drop, and when it finally does, it crashes through the ceiling and destroys the whole room. I keep thinking about the sheer look of rage on Carly's face and the absolute desperation in Cassius's eyes. It was raw, it was visceral, and it was one of the most intense things we have witnessed on this show in a very long time. To truly understand why this hit so incredibly hard, we have to look back at the foundation of this entire nightmare. Felicia returning from her visit with Anna in France was the catalyst we have been waiting for. We knew Anna had figured out the truth that this man was not our beloved Nathan West, but Cassius Phazon, a cruel imposter who stole his own twin brother's life. But seeing Felicia actually carry that heavy, devastating truth back to Port Charles, that was a gut punch. I can't help feeling that Felicia, of all people, having to be the messenger of this dark reality adds such a profound layer of tragedy to the narrative. She loved Nathan. We all loved Nathan. And for Felicia to realize that the man walking around, interacting with James, and wearing Nathan's face is actually the monster who orchestrated so much pain, it is just heartbreaking. The stakes were already astronomical, but when Felicia confirmed the results of her and Anna's secret investigation, it felt like the air was sucked out of the room. This wasn't just a rumor anymore. It was cold, hard, devastating fact. I keep thinking about the immense burden Felicia must have felt on that flight back home. She was carrying a secret that was going to destroy lives, shatter illusions, and break hearts all over again. The legacy of Nathan West is something this canvas has held sacred for years. We mourned him, we watched Maxie struggle to move on, and we watched James grow up without his father. Then, this miraculous resurrection happens, and we are all swept up in the emotional high of having Nathan back. To have that ripped away, to realize that the town's grief was weaponized and manipulated by a sociopathic twin, is a level of psychological cruelty that is hard to stomach. Felicia didn't just bring back news. She brought back a wrecking ball aimed directly at the heart of Port Charles. And the fact that she immediately sought out Carly to deliver this information speaks volumes about the urgency and the sheer terror of the situation. And then, as if the imposter reveal wasn't enough to make our collective jaws hit the floor, Felicia drops the absolute mother of all bombshells on Carly. Jocelyn is alive. Not only is she alive, but she is being held hostage at Windermere, and the mastermind behind her kidnapping is none other than Cassius himself. Guys, the sheer magnitude of this revelation cannot be overstated. We have watched Carly and Lucas agonizing over Jocelyn's disappearance, suspecting that something sinister was happening at Windermere, but having it confirmed by Felicia in such a frantic, urgent manner, it was electric. All the puzzle pieces that Anna had managed to put together from afar suddenly clicked into place right in front of Carly's eyes. You could visibly see the exact moment Carly's heart shattered and then instantly reformed into pure, unadulterated titanium. The realization that the man who had been parading around town, playing the role of a grieving, resurrected hero, was actually the architect of her daughter's suffering, that is the kind of storytelling that reaches right into your chest and squeezes your heart. I love this storyline for giving us the ultimate Mama Bear Carly. I have to admit, there is nothing quite like watching Carly operate on pure maternal instinct. When she realizes her child is in danger, she doesn't wait for the police. She doesn't wait for a grand strategy. She just becomes a force of nature. Felicia tried to stop her, tried to reason with her, but we all knew that was a completely futile effort. You cannot stand in front of a freight train and expect it to yield. Carly racing to Windermere to confront Cassius was one of the most thrilling, edge-of-your-seat sequences I have ever seen. The anticipation was agonizing in the best possible way. You could feel the adrenaline pumping through the screen. Every step she took toward that castle felt heavy with years of protective fury. Carly has lost so much in her life, and the thought of losing Jocelyn to a man wearing the face of a friend was the ultimate breaking point. Let's talk about that confrontation because, guys, what in the world did we just witness? Carly did not just confront Cassius. She unleashed decades of pent-up trauma, fear, and rage onto him. The physical altercation was shocking. We know Carly is tough, but seeing her inflict such severe, life-threatening injuries on Cassius was genuinely jarring. It was a level of violence born out of pure desperation to save Jocelyn. I was sitting there screaming at my screen, completely captivated by the raw brutality of the moment. Carly was not holding back, and Cassius, for all his scheming and manipulation, was completely overwhelmed by the wrath of a mother fighting for her child. I loved the intensity of it, but part of me was terrified for Carly. She was crossing a line that you don't easily come back from. The show did an incredible job of making us feel the weight of every blow, every scream, every shattered piece of furniture. It was chaotic, messy, and deeply uncomfortable, which is exactly what a confrontation of this magnitude should be. Now, we have to judge the absolute cowardice of Cassius Faison in this moment. I understand why he did what he did, but I still think his surrender was one of the most pathetic things I have ever seen from a villain on this show. Instead of fighting to the bitter end, instead of owning his villainy, this man is severely injured, bleeding out, and he just folds. He releases Jocelyn and begs Carly for mercy. He begs her not to turn him in, not to expose his fake identity to the world. He just wants to slink away into the shadows and disappear forever. Maybe I'm being unfair, but I wanted Cassius to face justice. I wanted him to be dragged through the PCPD in handcuffs. I wanted him to have to look James and Maxie in the eye and admit that he stole Nathan's legacy. For him to use Jocelyn's freedom as a bargaining chip to save his own miserable life is just so incredibly manipulative and cowardly. He didn't release Jocelyn out of the goodness of his heart. He did it because Carly beat him to a pulp and he knew his grand charade was over. It is a brilliant character choice for a coward, but as a viewer, it makes my blood boil. And then there is Carly's decision to accept the deal. I have to admit, I am profoundly torn on this. I understand why Carly agreed to keep quiet. If you ask me, any mother in her position would prioritize getting her daughter to safety over anything else. Jocelyn was finally free, right there in front of her, and the immediate threat was neutralized. Plus, Carly had just committed a brutal assault. If the police got involved, Carly would undoubtedly be facing serious prison time for nearly killing Cassius, regardless of the circumstances. Our legal system in Port Charles is notoriously flawed, and Carly knows that better than anyone. So she makes the ultimate pragmatic choice. She takes her daughter and lets the monster crawl away to die or disappear. I get it. I really do. But I still think that was a mistake. By letting Cassius go, Carly is denying everyone else the closure they deserve. She is denying Anna, Felicia, Dante, and especially Maxie the right to see this imposter face the consequences of his actions. Carly made a decision for her family, but in doing so, she potentially compromised the safety and emotional closure of the entire town. This brings me to the absolute core of my internal conflict, the fan conflict that is tearing me apart right now. Part of me wants to believe that this is the perfect, tragic, messy ending this storyline needed. It is dark, it is morally gray, and it perfectly encapsulates who Carly is as a character. She will burn the world down to save her kids, even if it means letting a villain walk away. It is so true to her history. Another part of me thinks that the writers took the easy way out. By having Cassius disappear into the unknown, bleeding and broken, they avoid the messy legal aftermath and the complicated emotional fallout with the rest of the canvas. I honestly can't decide if I am in awe of the storytelling or deeply resentful of it. We are left with this massive void. Is Cassius going to die in the woods from his injuries? Is he going to manage to stitch himself up and return in 5 years to wreak havoc again? The ambiguity is maddening. I am sitting here oscillating between thinking this was a masterstroke of dramatic tension and feeling like we were robbed of a definitive, satisfying conclusion to the fake Nathan saga. I keep thinking about the psychological toll this is going to take on Jocelyn. We cannot gloss over what she just witnessed and what she has endured. She was held captive at Windermere, terrified and isolated, only to have her mother burst in like an avenging angel and brutally dismantle her captor. That is not something you just walk away from and forget. Jocelyn is now bound to Carly by this incredibly dark, violent secret. They have to go back to Port Charles and pretend that none of this happened the way it did. They have to look their friends and family in the eye and lie to protect Carly from an attempted murder charge. Jocelyn has always had a strong moral compass, often clashing with the darker elements of her family's lifestyle. Now, she is fully complicit in letting a dangerous criminal escape justice to protect her mother. The internal conflict that Jocelyn is going to face in the coming weeks is going to be monumental, and I am both terrified and fascinated to see how she handles it. Furthermore, I am deeply frustrated by how this leaves the rest of the characters who were so heavily invested in Nathan's return. Maxie is still out there, completely unaware that the man she thought was the love of her life returned from the grave is actually a monster. Dante has been defending this imposter, putting his own reputation on the line. They all deserve the truth. By making this a secret pact between Carly, Jocelyn, and Cassius, the show has effectively silenced the emotional fallout for the rest of the town. I understand that Carly's primary focus was her daughter, but the ripple effects of this secret are going to be devastating when they inevitably come to light. And in Port Charles, secrets always come to light. The longer they keep this hidden, the worse the explosion will be when the truth finally surfaces. I can't help feeling that Carly has just traded one immediate crisis for a slow-burning disaster that will eventually consume them all. The sheer audacity of Cassius to ask for silence is something that I will never get over. He played everyone. He wore his dead brother's face, manipulated his grieving family, and kidnapped a young woman, and his final play is to beg for a quiet exit. It is infuriating because it works. He found the one leverage point that could stop Carly in her tracks, her own freedom and her daughter's safety. It is a masterclass in manipulation, even in defeat. But it leaves such a bitter taste in my mouth. I wanted the grand unmasking. I wanted the dramatic courtroom scenes. I wanted the town to rally together to condemn him. Instead, we get a quiet, bloody deal made in the shadows of Windermere. It is poetic in a very twisted way, but it is not the catharsis that I think a lot of us were hoping for after investing so much time and emotion into this imposter storyline. As we look forward, the fate of Cassius Faison hangs over the show like a dark cloud. No one knows if he survived those injuries. Carly left him battered and broken, and he could very well bleed to death before he ever makes it out of Port Charles. But in the soap world, if there isn't a body, there isn't a death. The fact that his fate is a total mystery means that the writers are keeping him in their back pocket for a future return. And that thought is terrifying. If he survives, he is going to be out there harboring a massive grudge against Carly, knowing her darkest secret. The tension of waiting for his inevitable return is going to be a fantastic narrative engine. But right now, in the immediate aftermath, it just feels like a massive lack of resolution. We are left suspended in this state of anxiety, wondering when the other shoe is going to drop again. Am I the only one feeling this way? I genuinely need to know if I am losing my mind over this or if you guys are in the exact same boat. Did Carly make the right call in letting Cassius go to protect herself and secure Jocelyn's freedom? Or should she have called the cops and faced the music to ensure Cassius was locked up for good? Are you satisfied with this ambiguous, violent exit for the imposter? Or do you feel cheated out of a massive town-wide reveal? Guys, what do you think? Drop your thoughts, your rants, and your theories in the comments below because I am desperate to talk about this with people who understand the emotional investment we have in this show. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe this is exactly how it had to end, but I need to hear your perspectives. Until next time, stay passionate, stay vocal, and keep watching.
Goodbye. Please like, subscribe, and comment on the GH Spoilers Daily channel.